Hi everyone, my name is Hadassah Matievsky. I'm really excited to be participating in the Endless Mountain Empowerment Summit 21 Days of Empowerment. This is my first time doing a web recording like this. I'm really excited to be facing one of my fears today, which is online videos. So you will get to see me actually trying to practice some of what I preach in this presentation on controlling your fears while I'm actually giving it. So a little about me. My name is Hadassah Matievsky. I'm a quality engineer in the Binghamton area. Prior to that, I was a program and research coordinator at Binghamton University under distinguished Professor David Sloan Wilson. I'm also a trained pro-social facilitator. It's the science of doing better with teams, pro-social as opposed to anti-social behavior. Also work organized by David Sloan Wilson, who I worked with at the university. So I grew up in Vestal, New York, and I have now moved to the big city. I have a house in the city of Binghamton. So everyone is afraid of public speaking. Everyone is nervous. Mark Twain is quoted as saying, "There are two types of speakers, those who get nervous and those who are liars." So if you're afraid of public speaking, you are not alone. You are not alone. The difference between an experienced, an effective speaker and a beginner is the ability to control nerves and redirect them to enhance a speech. This is done by understanding anxiety triggers, symptoms, and available tools for managing anxiety. I did not start out as a nervous or anxious child. I was actually very outspoken. Couldn't shut me up really. But by middle school and definitely by high school, I was more timid about public. In high school, I'm not exactly sure why, but I decided to sign up for the elective of theater. One of our main assignments was to write our own monologue and perform it for the class. Getting up in front of that room was so scary. I got up there, I forgot my lines, I forgot what I was doing. Everything that you could envision about what could go wrong went wrong in this monologue. Your worst nightmare about public speaking was what I experienced in my high school theater class. I panicked. Boy, did I panic. I started crying. I started hyperventilating. I couldn't breathe. I eventually collapsed onto the floor. I kept, between what breath I had, begging for help, and no one helped me. Why? On a humorous note, since we had been instructed to write our own monologues, people thought that my panic attack was my monologue. They thought I was acting. They thought I was some sort of phenomenal actor, and no one helped me. It was a really life-altering event to have that happen. After that, when I had to give presentations in school all the way through college, I was that horrible presenter who hid behind index cards or stared at the PowerPoint screen instead of the audience. I was so afraid that I would forget what I had to say. Since then, I have had to do a lot of personal work to try to deal with anxiety and panic. Oftentimes, where fear comes up in one area of your life, you start to see it in other places. In graduate school, I decided I needed to do something about my fear of public speaking. I knew at the end of my master's program, I was going to have to defend my master's thesis in front of a room full of people. I was going to have to give a solid presentation to a diverse audience of people, including technical experts, and then answer questions. So both prepared speaking and impromptu speaking. And I couldn't just hide behind my index cards. So I joined Toastmasters. Confidence in public speaking is one of the top reasons everyone joins, and then we stay for all the other benefits. But I am so glad that I decided to join that club. So a bit about what to do when you are the me in this story, when you realize you have an overwhelming fear of public speaking. The first thing is to look at anxiety triggers. So new and unknown situations. So for me today, what is bothering me anxiety-wise is that I have never done a web presentation like this, right? There's no audience. While over time I became more comfortable with actual public speaking, I never got comfortable with recording myself with no audience. So new and unknown situations is a natural anxiety trigger. Fear of failure or criticism. So for me with this video, it's going online. People are going to be able to see it. People are going to be able to search for it. It doesn't just disappear after I present, right? So that fear of failure is definitely present for me today. And fear of criticism, right? So here I am saying I joined Toastmasters and I got excited about public speaking and I overcame my fear. But maybe you're going to see this and say, but she's no good, right? This talk wasn't so great, right? So that fear of criticism is there. Now, I don't have this one, but I was reading about people who have a fear of praise. So some people can't take positive reinforcement. It's something that makes them uncomfortable. Oftentimes, people who have this, they're in cultures where standing out, even if you're standing out for a good reason, is not looked positively on. So that's out there. That's not my personal fear problem, but that might be one of yours. So included that in your anxiety triggers list if that's something that you feel relates to you. Potential for appearing foolish and possibility of being boring to the audience, right? So for me, again, coming back to this recording a video for the first time that's going onto YouTube, is I can't see your reaction to me while I'm speaking to you. Maybe I'm boring you. Maybe you already know all of this. So those are all the anxiety triggers that I'm going through right now. Anxiety symptoms. So that's the next thing to look at. Increased heart rate, butterflies in our stomach, uncontrollable shakes, lightheadedness, dizziness, forgetfulness, panic attack, and procrastination. So let's think about a few of these, and I'll share something that I read from Mel Robbins' 5-second rule. I actually heard her say it first and then went out and read her book to reinforce it. Anxiety and excitement are very related. The symptoms, right, of increased heart rate, butterflies in the stomach, maybe some shakiness, little lightheadedness. You could imagine having all of those sensations before, say, a first date that you're really excited about, right? You can have those same physiological reactions to something you're excited about in a positive way as something maybe you're dreading in a negative way, like getting up in front of an audience. A big difference between excitement and fear and anxiety is stress hormone levels. So you can have the same response, but with and without some of the stress hormones. So if you can talk to your brain about what you're experiencing and translate it to your brain as it being excitement as opposed to fear and anxiety, you can start to get some control over that. And we'll talk a little bit about some other strategies in the next slide as well. But again, the extreme symptoms of anxiety are forgetfulness, panic attack, etc. So I added those on because I personally experienced those and they were not in the original Toastmasters outline. Another one that I came to realize was actually anxiety was procrastination. We put off things that we don't want to think about or deal with, things that cause us anxiety. So if you don't feel good about a presentation, you may not want to work at it so much, right? So that becomes almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. So we can get ourselves to work on things and practice, then we'll be less afraid of them as well. So that anxiety symptom of procrastination, where you see yourself procrastinating, there's probably some anxiety lying underneath that. So managing anxiety, I got into it a little bit in the previous slide. Experience, so practice. If it's your first time doing any type of presentation, see if there's a place that you can practice. So obviously, if you join Toastmasters, there's always a venue for you to practice in your local club. But that may be too small for you, right? So then you might want to, or you might get to know the people in your club so well that it's not the same fear that you're trying to overcome because you really want to be confident talking to strangers. And now the people that you've talked to a few times aren't strangers, right? So you can always speak to a different club, or you can look for speaking opportunities at your church or community group, or speaking up at a PTA meeting, right? So there's all sorts of opportunities to gain experience, and you can start small and work your way up. And I would say with experience, you can think about it in two different ways. There's the actual direct practice makes perfect kind of thinking about it. There's also the psyching yourself up thinking about it. So just as you would with a resume, to think about a storyline or a narrative of the experience that you have to get you where you're trying to go, you can do that thinking about your public speaking experiences. So little instances where you had some success speaking in a meeting at work, or in when you're volunteering at your kid's school, right? You can start to kind of track some of your successful experiences and remind yourself that you've had those successes and that you're building on some success. Visualization, right? You can't always actually get the direct experience before doing it. And in those cases, you can visualize, right? So you can actually think through, and you want to think through every little thing, right? If you're going to be speaking with a podium or lectern, right? Walking up to there. If you're going to be introduced by someone, think about that handshake, hearing that introduction before you walk up. Think about the applause. Think about how you're going to exit the stage, right? All of those little details. Actually think all of those things through. Relaxation is a good way to manage anxiety. You can do all sorts of techniques. I, for one, always think about breathing, taking that deep breath before you go on. In one of my many, many random odd jobs over the years, I was actually a tight wire instructor for children in a little circus camp in Binghamton. And that was one of the big things that we had to tell people is before you step onto that tight wire, take a deep breath. It is so important for focusing you in on what you're doing. And it helps with anything you're trying to do, not just public speaking. So as I mentioned before, identifying fear as excitement, it can be a strategy. If your anxiety relates to doing something quickly, like raising your hand or speaking up impromptu, as opposed to a big prepared presentation, the 5-second rule might help. It also might help with getting you to say yes when opportunities come up to build that experience that you want to get you where you want to go. So the 5-second rule by Mel Robbins is that you count back from 5, like you're a rocket taking off. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And when you hit 1, so that, blast off, right? You do the thing that you know you should be doing, right? And this can apply to all sorts of areas of your life. I used it for quite a while to help me get in the routine of waking up in the morning, right? Getting out of bed earlier than I wanted to, rather than hitting the snooze to count back from 5 and jump out. But you can use this in any situation where you know what you should be doing, but your brain is good at talking you out of doing it, right? So that could be going to the gym. It could be with public speaking, it could be raising your hand in a meeting, right? So if you know that you have something really important to say in that room and in that space, but you are starting to hear yourself do things like say, oh, someone else is already going to kind of said it, but not exactly. Oh, I'm going to look dumb if I say something, right? No one's going to listen to me anyway. All of those kind of negative thoughts and rationales we have for not speaking up. Instead of listening to all of that, when you know that you have something important to say, count back 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and raise your hand, right? Actually doing a physical action at the end of that count back helps you overcome all of that self-doubt that creeps into our heads. And I've used this rule. It's as silly as it sounds. I've done it, and it's been helpful. Self-compassion. Treat yourself and try and talk to yourself the way you would talk to a friend. So if you're the type of person who ruminates and beats yourself up, telling yourself, I'm stupid, I can't do this, all of those really horrible negative inner voice, think about how you would talk to your friend who is going through the same thing and try to talk to yourself that way. You can also do other simple little things. If you're someone who likes hugs, you can give yourself a hug, obviously not when you're on stage, but maybe before you walk out. Or if your speech didn't go the way you wanted to and you're off stage and you're in a private area, you can give yourself a hug. So these are tools that you can use to deal with anxiety. And of course, always just acknowledging that anxiety is a natural part of human experience. It's okay to feel anxious, and other people have been through it. So just having that awareness that it's part of the human condition. Focus on what you can control, which is your behavior, right? So when you're managing anxiety, you may not be able to control your thoughts and your feelings entirely, but you can control your behavior. right? So you can decide to do a breathing exercise or do a mindfulness practice or give yourself a hug. All these different tools, practicing, taking opportunities, using different tools. So in conclusion, your nerves, everyone has nerves when it comes to public speaking. But if you use them appropriately, they can actually give you energy and enhance your presentation as opposed to slow you down and be detrimental to your presentation. A lot of those smaller symptoms, right, unless you're like me and have a full-on panic attack, the butterflies in the stomach, the racing heart, the audience won't notice that. They won't notice it as fear, especially if you are channeling it into positive energy. And, give these tools a try. Hopefully you'll find them useful. And once you overcome your fear of public speaking, hopefully you'll keep taking these tools into other areas of your life and beat down fear and anxiety wherever it is. So if you have any questions, you can email me. My email address is hadassah.joanne@gmail.com, and my website is there for you to look at. And I tweet about teamwork, STEM, Binghamton alumni, such university stuff. Can follow me on Twitter. And here's the reference I promised you. These 3 really fantastic books: 5 Second Rule, Mel Robbins, Playing Big, Practical Wisdom for Women Who Want to Speak Up, Create, and Lead, and Self-Compassion, Stop Beating Yourself Up, and Leave Insecurity Behind. Thank you.